You open the fridge without thinking about it. 2 weeks of food, chilled and sealed, sitting there because you barely had to try. Now go back 23,000 years, more than 1,000 generations before yours, to the muddy shore of a lake in what's now northern Israel. The herds haven't passed through in a season. The wild fruit trees are stripped bare. Winter is closing in, and every calorie left has to be pulled out of the mud, the reeds, or a handful of wild grass seeds most people today would walk straight past without a second look. So how did ancient humans survive when there was nothing left to eat? You've never actually run out of food. Not really. Even a bad week just means a smaller grocery bill, not a body running on fumes. For most of human history, that gap between hunger and starvation wasn't philosophical. It was seasonal. It was predictable, and it came for everyone, every single year, whether they were ready or not. Start with fat, because fat is what actually kills you first. Eat nothing but the leanest meat for too long, the driest cuts, no marrow, no organ, no grease. And your liver can't process pure protein fast enough. You starve with a full stomach. Hunters later gave it a name: rabbit starvation. Neanderthals appear to have understood the problem long before anyone had a word for it. In 2025, a team led by Lutz Kindler and Sabine Godzinski-Windhuser published findings from Neumark Nord, a site complex in central Germany, showing Neanderthals had systematically processed the remains of at least 172 large animals, deer, horses, aurochs, specifically to render bone grease. They smashed the bones into thousands of fragments, boiled them, and skimmed the fat off the surface. 172 carcasses, broken down on purpose, 125,000 years ago, for a nutrient most people don't picture cavemen thinking about at all. This wasn't leftover scraps. It was a factory line for the one thing standing between them and protein poisoning. So if rendered fat solved one problem, what solved the next one? Actually finding enough food, season after season, to render it from in the first place. Go back further still, to a limestone cave above Lake Nyassa in Mozambique. In 2009, archaeologist Julio Mercader published a study in the journal Science after testing 70 stone tools pulled from a layer of the cave dated to roughly 105,000 years ago. 80% of those tools carried microscopic starch grains, and 89% of that starch came from wild sorghum, ground and processed tens of thousands of years before anyone had planted a seed on purpose. Wild grass seeds aren't an easy meal. They're small, scattered, and demand real technique to turn into anything you can actually eat. Gathering, grinding, probably some form of cooking. Early Homo sapiens were doing exactly this 105,000 years ago, alongside wild tubers, wine palm fruit, and something researchers nicknamed the African potato. 90,000 years before farming existed anywhere on Earth, people already had a working pantry, built entirely from what the land refused to hide from a hungry, observant forager. Everyone assumes farming is what taught humans to harvest grain. That before agriculture. Gathering meant grabbing whatever grew nearby and hoping for the best. The evidence says the opposite. Structured grain processing existed tens of thousands of years before the first domesticated wheat field ever did, which brings the story back to that lake in northern Israel from the opening. The site is called Ohala II, on the shore of the Sea of Galilee, and it sat underwater for most of the last 23,000 years, which is exactly what preserved it so well. In 2004, botanist Ehud Weiss published findings in the journal Nature, describing a flat grinding stone recovered from the site, coated in starch residue from wild wheat, barley, and oats dot around it. Excavators found the remains of a single brush hut containing roughly 55,000 individual seeds and fruits on one preserved floor. This was a campsite from the last glacial maximum, one of the coldest, hungriest stretches of the entire ice age. These people weren't just eating whatever grain they stumbled across. They were harvesting it, storing it, grinding it into something close to flour, season after season, to make it through the lean months alive. Here's where it gets stranger, though. For decades, isotope studies made Neanderthals look like near-total carnivores, chemically closer to wolves than to modern human foragers. Then, in 2014, geochemist Ainara Sistiaga analyzed fossilized feces recovered from El Salt, a Middle Paleolithic site in Alicante, Spain, occupied between roughly 60,000 and 45,000 years ago. Alongside the fat and protein signature you'd expect from a meat-heavy diet, she found 5-beta-stigmastanol, a compound that only forms when the body breaks down plant sterols. 2 of her samples carried it. Not much, but enough to prove something the bones alone couldn't. When meat ran short, Neanderthals didn't stubbornly starve on principle. They ate roots, greens, whatever the season handed them, and adjusted. Everyone pictures Neanderthals as rigid, meat-obsessed specialists, too inflexible to survive what came next. The coprolites tell a different story. A species that could switch fuel sources the moment the environment demanded it. Now, the assumption that's hardest to shake, that when food truly disappeared, people turned on each other. At Gough's Cave in Somerset, England, Archaeologists recovered human bones dated to roughly 14,700 years ago, chewed, cracked open for marrow, 3 skulls carefully shaped into cups. At first glance, it reads like the ultimate famine story. Dr. Sylvia Bello of London's Natural History Museum found the opposite. The same layer was packed with horse, deer, and grouse bones. Food was not scarce when this happened. The cutting patterns matched ritual butchery, not desperate survival. These Ice Age Britons ate their dead on purpose, with abundant meat sitting right beside them. The one behavior everyone assumes was about starvation turns out to be one of the clearest examples in the fossil record of it not being about starvation at all. So what actually got people through it? Not desperation, not chaos. A quiet, accumulated skill set, rendering fat before the meat ran out, grinding grain before farming existed, switching to plants the moment the herds vanished, and passing every bit of it down precisely enough that a technique invented in Africa 105,000 years ago and one used on a lakeshore in Israel 23,000 years ago rhyme with each other despite never touching. The real answer to what ancient humans ate when there was nothing left isn't one dramatic food. It's the fact that nothing left was never actually true. There was always something, if you knew exactly where to look and exactly how to make it last. Picture that fridge again, quietly humming, holding 2 weeks of food you'll probably forget is even there. Now picture the lakeshore in northern Israel, 23,000 years ago, where that same instinct, plan, process, preserve, kept a starving winter's worth of people alive on nothing but ground wild grass. You didn't inherit a fear of running out. You inherited the solution to it, refined over 100,000 years and buried so deep inside modern convenience that it stopped looking like survival at all. Ancient humans never really ran out of food. They just ran out of easy food and got to work.